Waiter insults Chris Brown in hotel. Didn't expect what would happen.
The Beverly Hills hotel kitchen hummed with its usual evening chaos. Mike Thompson wiped sweat from his forehead with his sleeve, balancing 3 plates of overpriced pasta on his arm. 10 years in this place had taught him the art of keeping calm in the storm. Table 7's riding my ass about their wine. Jenny, a newer server, muttered as she rushed past him. Her blonde ponytail swung with nervous energy. Like I can make the sommelier appear out of thin air. Mike nodded sympathetically, delivering his plates to a group of aging Hollywood executives who barely acknowledged his existence. That was fine by him. The quiet ones were usually easier to handle. "You good?" he asked Jenny when he returned to the service station. She was young, maybe 23, and still learning the ropes of high-end service. Her hands shook slightly as she arranged wine glasses on her tray. "Yeah, just, you know how it gets," she forced a smile. "At least the tips are worth it, usually." Mike checked his section map. Table 12 was still empty, but marked VIP. That could mean anything from a minor reality television star to actual royalty. He'd served them all over the years, learned their quirks, their triggers, their favorite wines. Most importantly, he'd learned when to speak and when to disappear. "Heads up," Carlos, the host, called out as he passed by. "Chris Brown just pulled up. He's yours tonight, Mike." Something tightened in Mike's chest. He'd heard stories about Brown from other servers, none of them good. How many in the party? 6, maybe 7. His usual crew. Carlos paused. "Watch yourself, man. I heard he's been in a mood all week." Mike straightened his black tie, a routine gesture that helped center him. When isn't he? The first sign of trouble came before Brown even sat down. Mike watched from the service station as the singer brushed past an elderly couple, nearly knocking the woman off balance. No apology, not even a glance back. "Here we go," Mike muttered under his breath. Brown's entourage filled the space like they owned it. 2 massive security guards, a guy who looked like a manager, 2 women Mike pegged as Instagram models, and someone furiously typing on a laptop. Brown himself took the power seat, back to the wall, full view of the room. "Give them 5 minutes to settle," Mike advised Jenny, who had the adjacent section. "Let them feel like they own the place before you approach." She nodded, but her eyes were fixed on the table. "I've heard he doesn't tip. Like, ever." "That's the least of what I've heard." Mike started preparing water service. "Just stay professional. If they give you trouble, signal me." The 5 minutes passed too quickly. Mike approached table 12 with practiced confidence, the kind that came from years of handling difficult personalities. "Good evening, welcome to." Water, sparkling. "And don't bring that cheap stuff." Brown didn't look up from his phone. One of the women giggled. Mike maintained his composure. "We serve San Pellegrino or Perrier." "Did I ask for a history lesson?" Now Brown looked up, his expression a mix of amusement and contempt. "Pellegrino. Hurry up." The next 20 minutes set a tone. Brown sent back 2 bottles of water because they weren't cold enough. He made comments about the menu prices despite being worth millions. When Jenny approached their table by mistake, Brown's bodyguard practically growled at her. Mike watched it all from the periphery, feeling the familiar burn of frustration in his gut. He'd seen this type before. People so wrapped up in their own importance, they forgot how to be human. The breaking point came during the appetizer course. Jenny was serving the adjacent table, a family celebrating their daughter's college acceptance. She accidentally brushed against one of Brown's security guards while setting down a plate. "Watch it," the guard snapped. "I'm so sorry," Jenny stammered, stepping back. Her face flushed red. Brown looked up from his phone, smirking. "Maybe if you spent less time apologizing and more time doing your job right." The table erupted in laughter. Jenny's eyes welled up as she hurried away. Mike saw her duck into the service hallway, shoulders shaking. Something snapped inside him. 10 years of biting his tongue, of watching entitled celebrities treat people like dirt, of remembering his own daughter, just a few years younger than Jenny, and how he'd feel if someone treated her this way. When Brown snapped his fingers to summon him minutes later, Mike felt eerily calm. Like the moment before a storm when the air goes still. "Hey, we're ready to order," Brown shouted across the dining room, not bothering to look up from his phone. Mike walked over slowly, deliberately. The restaurant had quieted somewhat, other diners glancing over at Brown's loud voice. "You gonna take our order, or what?" Brown asked, still scrolling. Mike stood straight, looking down at the singer. A decade of suppressed responses rose in his throat. "When you learn to address people with basic respect," Mike said clearly, "I'll be happy to serve you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Brown's thumbs froze mid-text. His entourage shifted uncomfortably. One of the women whispered, "Oh shit." Brown slowly looked up, his expression transforming from surprise to fury. "What did you just say to me?" Mike didn't move. Behind him, he could sense other servers freezing in place, could hear the murmur of nearby diners. In the service hallway, Jenny stood watching, her eyes wide. "You heard me," Mike said quietly. "I've watched you disrespect every staff member since you walked in. We're people, not your servants." Brown's chair scraped back. Mike saw the security guards tense, ready to move, but it was too late to take it back now. Too late to pretend this was just another night of swallowing pride for tips. And, honestly, he didn't want to take it back at all. Brown stepped closer, his designer shoes squeaking on the polished floor. "Do you know who I am?" Chris Brown, Mike said evenly. "Grammy winner, multi-platinum artist, and right now, a man making a young woman cry over water bottles." The manager, Sarah Chen, materialized beside them, her face professionally neutral, but eyes alert. "Is there a problem here?" "Yeah, there's a problem." Brown snapped, jabbing a finger toward Mike. "Your waiter's got a death wish." Sarah started to speak, but Mike cut her off. "No death wish. Just tired of watching bullies throw their weight around." The room had gone completely silent now. Phones emerged from purses and pockets, their cameras glinting in the dim restaurant lighting. Brown's face contorted as he noticed them. "You trying to go viral?" he snarled. "That what this is about?" Mike shook his head. "This is about basic human decency, about treating people like people." "Mike," Sarah warned quietly, "take a break." But Mike stood his ground. He thought of his daughter waiting tables to pay for college, of Jenny crying in the hallway, of countless servers who'd suffered similar abuse in silence. "I've served everyone from actual royalty to rock stars in this room," Mike continued, his voice steady but carrying in the silence. "Most of them understand something you don't. That real power isn't about making people feel small." Brown's bodyguard moved forward, but Brown waved him back. The singer's eyes had taken on a dangerous gleam. "You got family?" Brown asked softly, menacingly. "A job you care about?" "Are you threatening me now?" Mike laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's your response to being called out for bad behavior? Threats?" Sarah stepped between them. "Mr. Brown, please, let me handle this. Mike, come with me." "Nah," Brown said, his hand shooting out to grab Mike's collar. "Let him finish. He's got so much to say." The contact was like an electric shock through the room. Gasps rippled across nearby tables. More phones rose. Brown's grip tightened on Mike's pristine white shirt. "Last chance," Brown growled. "Apologize." Mike looked into the singer's eyes, saw the hurt and anger there, the hair-trigger temper that had made headlines before. He could end this now, save his job, walk away. Instead, he said quietly, "I'm not the one who needs to apologize." What happened next would play out on social media for weeks to come. But in that moment, with Brown's fingers twisted in his collar and dozens of eyes watching, Mike felt something he hadn't experienced in years of service. Pride. Because sometimes principles matter more than paychecks. Sometimes you have to stand up, even if you know you're going to fall. And Mike Thompson, career waiter and father of two, was finally done falling. The TMZ headline hit at midnight. Chris Brown Hotel Meltdown. Waiter claims racial slur accusation false. Witnesses back him up. Mike sat in his living room, watching his face splash across every major news network. The videos had been edited, analyzed, and replayed countless times. His phone had finally stopped ringing around 3 a.m., but his email inbox was overflowing. "You need to see this," Emma said, thrusting her phone at him over breakfast. "Lady Gaga just tweeted about you." Mike squinted at the screen. "At Lady Gaga." Met this man 3 times at Beverly Hills Hotel. Ultimate professional. Always kind, always dignified. Some people mistake kindness for weakness. Not today. Number I stand with Mike. Karen poured more coffee. That's going to make waves. It already is. Emma scrolled through her feed. Look at the responses. Leonardo DiCaprio's people just released a statement too. Mike rubbed his temples. This is getting out of hand. The doorbell rang. Karen peeked through the curtains. It's Sarah from the hotel. Mike opened the door to find his manager looking exhausted but determined. Corporate's called an emergency meeting, she said without preamble. They want you there. To fire me? Sarah's lips twitched. Actually, I don't think so. Have you seen the hotel's reviews this morning? Mike shook his head. 5 stars across the board. Hundreds of new reviews. People are making reservations just to request you as their server. She paused. But that's not why I'm here. Someone else wants to meet with you first. Who? Rihanna's team reached out. The room went silent. Emma dropped her phone. She's in town for a charity event, Sarah continued. Wants to meet privately, no press. Mike sank into a chair. Why? Because of this. Sarah showed him Rihanna's latest tweet, posted just minutes ago. At Rihanna, some people never change. Standing with the service workers. Number, enough is enough. The tweet already had over 1 million likes. This isn't about me anymore, is it? Mike asked quietly. Sarah shook her head. It never was. You just happened to be the spark that lit the fuse. Karen touched his shoulder. What do you want to do? Before Mike could answer, his phone buzzed with a text from Jenny. Turn on CNN. Brown's team is doing damage control. It's not going well for them. The television flickered to life. Brown's manager was speaking to reporters outside a hotel, looking flustered. Mr. Brown feels that his actions have been misrepresented. The waiter in question. Mike Thompson, a reporter interrupted. The waiter has a name. Mr. Thompson, the manager corrected, provoked. We have 7 different camera angles, another reporter cut in. None show any provocation. Just Mr. Thompson asking for basic respect. The manager's face tightened. Mr. Brown has been under a lot of pressure. Is that an excuse for threatening service workers? No one was threatened. We have the footage, sir. The press conference devolved from there. Mike watched in silence as his simple act of defiance snowballed into something bigger than himself. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number, but the text made his heart stop. This is Robin. People call me Rihanna. We need to talk. What happened to you? It happened to me too. Different context. Same person. Same rage. Can you meet today? Emma, reading over his shoulder, gasped. Dad. Mike looked at Sarah. What time is that corporate meeting? 2 p.m. Tell them I'll be there. He stood up, decision made. But I have somewhere else to be first. The next few hours would change everything. But as Mike Thompson prepared to meet one of the biggest stars in the world, he realized something important. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage inspire the biggest movements, and sometimes standing up for what's right means you don't have to stand alone for long. The media circus outside his house had grown. Reporters shouted questions as he and Sarah walked to her car. Mr. Thompson, what do you say to Chris Brown's accusations? Have you spoken to your lawyers? Is it true you're meeting with Rihanna? Mike paused, turning to face the cameras. In the daylight, their flashes seemed less intimidating. I'm a waiter, he said clearly. That's my job. I serve people, but that doesn't make me less worthy of respect. If we've learned anything from this, I hope it's that everyone deserves basic dignity, even from celebrities. A cheer went up from the small crowd that had gathered. Mike saw hotel workers among them, wearing their uniforms proudly. Jenny was there too, holding a sign that read, Respect is earned. As Sarah drove them toward the private meeting location, Mike's phone buzzed one more time. Another tweet was going viral. At Chris Brown, nobody disrespects me and gets away with it. Hope that waiter's ready for what's coming. Number, real talk. Sarah glanced at the phone. He just made a big mistake. Mike nodded, thinking of the meeting ahead. Yeah, he really did. Because sometimes the biggest battles aren't won with fists or threats. Sometimes they're won by simply standing your ground, speaking your truth, and letting the world decide what's right. And the world was definitely watching now. 3 days had transformed Mike Thompson's life completely. The GoFundMe accounts set up in his name had collectively raised over $200,000. Job offers flooded his inbox. News shows fought for exclusive interviews. But none of that prepared him for the text he received Wednesday morning. "We need to talk, face to face, no cameras, no lawyers, just us, CB." Mike showed the message to Rihanna's lawyer, Victoria Chen, during their morning meeting. "It's a trap," she said immediately. "His social media's been quiet for 24 hours. They're planning something." But Mike wasn't so sure. What if it's not? Then it's even more dangerous. Victoria leaned forward. "Look, the public's on your side. The hotel's backing you. We have a solid case for harassment and workplace intimidation. Why risk it?" Mike stared at the text. "Because running away was never my style." The meeting was arranged for that afternoon in a private conference room at Brown's lawyer's office. No phones, no recording devices, just 2 men and a chance to end this. Mike arrived early, accompanied by Victoria. She wasn't happy about the meeting, but insisted on at least escorting him to the door. "You don't have to do this," she reminded him one last time. "Yeah, I do." Mike straightened his tie. Not a server's uniform this time, but his own suit. Some things need to be said face to face. The conference room was smaller than he expected. Chris Brown sat alone at the table, no entourage, no security. He looked different, tired, maybe. More human. "You came alone," Brown said, surprise evident in his voice. "So did you." Silence stretched between them. Brown fidgeted with a pen, avoiding eye contact. "Why weren't you scared?" he finally asked. "When I grabbed you, everyone gets scared." Mike took a seat across from him. "Because I grew up with guys like you. Big tough men who push people around because they're hurting inside. I used to be scared." "Not anymore." Brown's jaw tightened. "You don't know me." "No, I don't. But I saw that video of you watching our confrontation on CNN. You saw it too, didn't you? What you looked like." Brown's fingers clenched around the pen. "I've been in anger management for years," he said quietly. "But I never really got it until I saw myself on that video. I looked exactly like." He trailed off. "Like who?" "My old man." Brown's voice cracked slightly. "The way he used to get when he'd lose it. I swore I'd never be like him." Mike leaned forward. "Then don't be. It's not that simple. Actually, it is." Mike's voice was firm but not unkind. "Every time you choose to hurt someone, it's a choice. Every time you decide your fame makes you better than others, it's a choice. You can make different ones." Brown was silent for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "I saw that compilation video. All those other workers coming forward. Was I really like that every time?" "Yes." The simple honesty seemed to hit Brown harder than any accusation. He slumped in his chair. "My team wants me to sue you," he said. "Keep up the tough guy image. Show people they can't disrespect me." "Is that what you want?" Brown stared at his hands. I want to not be that guy in the video anymore. The one who looked just like my father." Mike nodded slowly. "That's a start." "What do you want?" Brown asked. "Money? An apology?" "I want you to get help. Real help, not just PR moves. And I want you to apologize to every service worker you've hurt. Not to me, to them." The press would have a field day. Maybe. Or maybe they'd see someone finally taking responsibility. Growing. Changing. Brown was quiet again, considering. Finally, he pulled out his phone. "Can I show you something?" He pulled up a draft of a social media post. "I've spent years trying to run from my past, but sometimes it catches up to you. Seeing myself lose control at the Beverly Hills Hotel made me face some hard truths. To every service worker I've disrespected, I'm sorry. I'm getting help. Real help this time. No excuses. No PR spin. Just truth. Special thanks to Mike Thompson for having the courage to stand up to me. Sometimes it takes someone brave enough to say, 'Enough,' to make you realize you need to change. I'm making a substantial donation to service workers' support organizations and committing to intensive therapy." This isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of a better one. Mike read it twice. You mean it? Every word. Brown met his eyes. I can't change the past, but I can choose what happens next. Post it. Brown's finger hovered over the screen. Just like that? Just like that. The post went live. Within minutes, it was viral. Comments flooded in, surprise, skepticism, but also support. Other celebrities began sharing it, adding their own stories of growth and change. What happens now? Brown asked quietly. Now you do the work, Mike replied, standing. And remember how this felt. The moment you chose to be better than your past. As he reached the door, Brown called after him. Thompson? Mike turned. Thank you, Brown said simply. For not backing down, for making me see. Mike nodded once and left, knowing some battles, and not with a bang, but with a moment of truth. A choice to change. A decision to be better. Outside, Victoria waited anxiously. How did it go? Mike showed her Brown's post, already trending worldwide. You think he means it? She asked. I think, Mike said carefully. Sometimes people surprise you. Sometimes they just need someone to stand up and show them a different way. His phone buzzed. A text from Jenny. Have you seen his post? Is it for real? Mike typed back. I think this time it is. Sometimes the hardest person to stand up to is yourself. Because in the end, that's what it was all about. Not fame or viral videos or social media trends. Just two men in a room, finding the courage to face their truths. One who learned to stand up. One who learned to stand down. And both who walked away stronger for it. The message arrived just as Mike was finishing his morning coffee. We need to talk. Face to face. No cameras, no lawyers. Just us. CB. Emma, reading over his shoulder, gasped. Dad, you can't. Your daughter's right, Karen said, setting down her coffee cup harder than necessary. After everything that's happened? That's exactly why I should, Mike interrupted. He stared at the message, remembering the look in Brown's eyes that night. Rage, yes, but something else too, something familiar. His phone rang. Victoria Chen, Rihanna's lawyer. I assume you got the message? She asked without preamble. Yeah. It's a trap. His team's been too quiet. They're planning something. Mike paced the kitchen. What if they're not? Then it's even more dangerous. Victoria's voice was sharp with concern. Mike, we have them. The public support, the hotel's backing, multiple witnesses. Why risk it? Because this isn't about winning anymore. There was a long pause. What's it about then? Mike thought about the compilation videos, the pattern of behavior, the look in Brown's eyes when he'd lost control. It's about breaking cycles, he said finally. Victoria sighed. You're going to do this no matter what I say, aren't you? Yes. Then let me at least set it up properly. Neutral ground, security sweeps, clear exit routes. The arrangements were made for that afternoon. Brown's lawyers offered their office building's conference room. No phones, no recording devices, no entourage. Jenny called as Mike was getting dressed. I saw his team requested a meeting, she said. The whole staff's talking about it. What are they saying? That you're crazy to go. She paused. But also that you're brave, like always. Mike adjusted his tie. Not a server's uniform this time, but his own suit. How are you doing? Back at work yet? Yeah, it's different now. People treat us better, like they're afraid of being the next viral video. She laughed softly. You changed things, Mike. We'll see. Victoria met him in the lobby of the law office. Her expression was thunderous. Last chance to back out, she said, handing him a small device. Panic button. Press it if anything feels wrong. It won't be necessary. Humor me. She squeezed his arm. You're a good man, Mike Thompson. Don't let him make you forget that. The conference room was smaller than he expected. Chris Brown sat alone at the mahogany table. No entourage, no security. He looked different. The designer clothes replaced by a simple black sweater, the flashy jewelry gone. You came alone, Brown said, surprise evident in his voice. So did you. Silence stretched between them. Brown fidgeted with a pen, avoiding eye contact. Why weren't you scared? He finally asked. When I grabbed you, everyone gets scared. Mike took a seat across from him. Because I grew up with guys like you. Big tough men who push people around because they're hurting inside. I used to be scared. Not anymore. Brown's jaw tightened. You don't know me. No, I don't. But I saw that video of you watching our confrontation on CNN. You saw it too, didn't you? What you look like? I looked like a monster, Brown said quietly. You looked like someone who learned the wrong lessons about power. Brown's fingers clenched around the pen. I've been in anger management for years, he admitted. But I never really got it until I saw myself on that video. I looked exactly like. He trailed off. Like who? My old man. Brown's voice cracked slightly. The way he used to get when he'd lose it. I swore I'd never be like him. Mike leaned forward. Then don't be. It's not that simple. Actually, it is. Mike's voice was firm, but not unkind. Every time you choose to hurt someone, it's a choice. Every time you decide your fame makes you better than others, it's a choice. You can make different ones. Brown was silent for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. I saw that compilation video, all those other workers coming forward. Was I really like that every time? Yes. The simple honesty seemed to hit Brown harder than any accusation. He slumped in his chair. My team wants me to sue you, he said. Keep up the tough guy image. Show people they can't disrespect me. Is that what you want? Brown stared at his hands. I want to not be that guy in the video anymore, the one who looked just like my father. Mike nodded slowly. That's a start. What do you want? Brown asked. Money? An apology? I want you to get help. Real help, not just PR moves. And I want you to apologize to every service worker you've hurt. Not to me, to them. The press would have a field day. Maybe. Or maybe they'd see someone finally taking responsibility. Growing. Changing. Brown pulled out his phone, hands slightly shaking. I wrote something, been working on it all night. He slid the phone across the table. Mike read the draft post. I've spent years trying to run from my past, but sometimes it catches up to you. Seeing myself lose control at the Beverly Hills Hotel made me face some hard truths. To every service worker I've disrespected, I'm sorry. I'm getting help. Real help this time. No excuses. No PR spin. Just truth. Special thanks to Mike Thompson for having the courage to stand up to me. Sometimes it takes someone brave enough to say enough to make you realize you need to change. I'm making a substantial donation to service workers' support organizations and committing to intensive therapy. This isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of a better one. My team hasn't seen it, Brown said quietly. They'd probably kill me for posting it. But I'm tired of being that guy. The one everyone's afraid of. The one who looks in the mirror and sees his father. Mike handed the phone back. Post it. Just like that? Just like that. Brown's finger hovered over the screen. What if people don't believe me? Then prove them wrong. Actions speak louder than posts. Brown pressed share. Within minutes, notifications began flooding in. I meant what I wrote, he said, setting the phone face down. About getting real help. I know. How? Mike gestured to the room. Because the old Chris Brown wouldn't be here alone. He'd have lawyers and security and a prepared statement. This. He paused. This is just a man trying to be better. Brown nodded, wiping his eyes quickly. I also want to talk to that waitress. Jenny? Apologize properly. That's her choice to accept or not. I know, but I need to try. Brown stood, extending his hand. Thank you, for not backing down, for making me see. Mike shook it firmly. Just remember how this feels. The moment you chose to be better than your past. Outside, Victoria was pacing. She grabbed Mike's arm as soon as he emerged. What happened? Are you okay? Do we need to? Check Twitter, Mike said simply. They watched together as Brown's post went viral. Celebrity reactions poured in. Support, surprise, respect for his honesty. You think he means it? Victoria asked skeptically. I think, Mike said carefully, sometimes people surprise you. Sometimes they just need someone to hold up a mirror.